Well, I think for us, at least for me, I know in the beginning, before anything had really happened with us, I prayed about it like a lot because I was like, I really want something to happen. And so I feel like mostly I prayed that like God would guide Zach in a way to pursue me because I wasn't going to go start anything.
You wanted him to take the lead.
Exactly. And so I think that I spent a lot of time in prayer just like praying, like, God, if this is your will, like, make something happen, like, I'm giving it to you, like, things like that.
Right.
Because, like, obviously we have feelings for each other, but, like, nothing really came out of it until later, and I think that I prayed a lot about, like, the timing of everything, because, I don't know, I just kind of knew this, like, something was going to happen eventually, but it was kind of a matter of when.
Yeah.
And also just, like, both of us were just, like, I think one of the most simple parts of discerning was just staying in a state of grace and praying regularly. And as you're doing that, I feel like God will just show you the way and He kind of put the opportunity in front of us.
Yeah. Do you feel like discernment is something that you have to continue to do as you date? Continue to discern if this is still where the Lord wants you?
Yeah, most definitely. I think we talk about it all the time, just like prayer and like how we're growing and if it's like right, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe a good question to ask is really as you two are dating in high school, we're talking about vocation, ultimately discerning if marriage is on the horizons or not. Obviously, not on the horizons necessarily as high schoolers. Then what would you say is the purpose of dating in high school then? If it's not like a direct, like, for me, I started dating Ashley at a point in my life where I could propose, right? But as someone who, that's not necessarily something that's going to happen in the near future, what would you say the purpose of dating then is?
Yeah, I feel like always the purpose of dating is for marriage. But as you said, like it's not in the foreseeable future. I still feel like it's important to make sure that this is a person that you can see yourself marrying. I remember like the first time we even talked about it, we were even talking about marriage, which is kind of weird. But I mean, when we first talked about it, I was like, yeah, I want like we're gonna start marriage together. So even though we were young, it was something already on the plate.
Yeah, I don't think that's weird at all. You know, I think it's an essential part of that conversation. If you're going to date, that dating should have a purpose. Ultimately, we know leading to marriage, right? If that's not part of the conversation, then what's the purpose of actually dating? You know. Great. Well, do you feel like you guys have actually been able to that dating has actually helped you to discern marriage, and maybe just some practical tips for those listening this evening? How does dating actually help as far as that discernment goes? Like Joe was talking about, for the guys, you sort of just have to go and ask the girl out on the date, right? That the dating actually helps in that decision making. How would you say it's helped you?
Well, I think honestly, it's been a journey. I feel like it's helped me know myself better, and it's honestly helped me grow closer to God, and that like I've been more in tune with His will. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I mean, a while ago, actually not that long ago, I actually like seriously started considering seminary, and during that time, it was kind of like scary, and I actually thought I was gonna have to break up with her for a week or so. But I just prayed through it, and like during that time, it helped me realize that, like I prayed through it, and I just started out of going to seminary, and I realized that like this really is the time to discern. And so I feel like through that, it just helped me realize like how key prayer is, and growing in that, and also just like knowing yourself. I feel like discernment isn't just prayer, even though that's a big part, but it's also like the most logical decision a lot of the times. So just thinking about it logically, like God's not going to ask you, I mean maybe He will, but He's not going to ask you to do something like absolutely insane that doesn't make sense in your life right then. like if he wants you to, he's going to put it in front of you, and you will have to make that decision. But sometimes it's not. Discernment can oftentimes be the slot decision.
Yeah.
I think also just like whenever you're dating someone, like it's gonna help you know if like marriage is your calling, and that like just logistically speaking, like are you comfortable like hanging out with another person for a really long time and like talking to them and like having fun with them and like I feel like, and like also just how you were talking about how like the seminary kind of became something prevalent in your life, like, and how like being willing to like break up over something like that is also just like a huge factor in like being aware of that.
Yeah.
Just kind of always having that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I had someone tell me one time that like it's a good sign if when you're dating someone you're also growing closer to the Lord. Do you feel like that's something that both of you have been able to experience of through dating you've been able to maybe learn something new about the Lord or just grow with Him in a new way?
Definitely. I think that a huge part of dating for me has been like growing in prayer, and I feel like we kind of have grown a lot together in our prayer, and we were talking about this earlier, like I feel like we're kind of prayer buddies in that like we're always holding each other accountable, we're talking about ways that we pray, we're talking about like how we can become better with prayer and what ways we're failing, and just kind of picking up the slack where the other is lacking, I feel like.
Yeah. And also just like small things that like she'll just mention things that I'll like realize like, whoa, I need to do that for prayer, or like we'll help each other in our our own faults and stuff, and like I'll like be completely her and she'll like offer it up.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah, like it kind of sucks when she says that, but he's like, but she's right, you know, and like in those little things, it's like you know that they actually care about you, and it helps you. Also, just like this is gonna get really cheesy, but I feel like her love for me really reflects like God's love for me in a way, and it helps me like realize how much cares about me and loves me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for sharing some insight. We're going to actually have Katie and Zach come back up as well as Joey just a little bit later to have sort of question and answer if you guys have any questions for them. But until then.
Joey, what chose you to go to that specific seminary that you went to, and on a different one?
I really like New Orleans. It is that seminary was very much open to like the outside community. Like it was right in the heart of New Orleans, and it was very like I thought of like seminaries as like a cloistered place where you don't like see the rest of the world, and my seminary was not like that. Like we would like you can go out to dinner like when you wanted to, as long as you get approved by the rector. But I was very involved in like the young adult community there outside of seminary as well. So like we went to Mardi Gras as a seminary, like in most of Mardi Gras is actually it's more like a tailgate, family friendly, really fun time. So like there was just a lot of like it was a very human place.
What seminary did you go to?
Yeah, so sorry, that was Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans.
I've
Yeah.
worked for Zach and Katie. So, you guys said you've liked each other since 7th grade, so why didn't you date sooner?
What happened between
Good
that
question.
seventh grade?
I think you should answer that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some history here.
Mostly because I was the one, but also you shouldn't really date in middle school. Yeah, I mean, yeah, most definitely not in middle school.
I mean, can you date just?
You could like hold hands on the playground or something.
We didn't talk to each other. Both. It wasn't a what you think. I feel like it was both of us. We were just like afraid of talking to each other.
Yeah.
We were one of those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we became friends like freshman year, and sophomore year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this can lead to a good point that I want to hear from Joey. we in our current culture, like the guy asking the girl out on the date can be very stressful for the man. I can tell you, it can be a stressful thing. All the guys in here, whether they have or have not, they've probably thought about it at some point. Asking a girl out on a date, maybe. What would you say as a piece of advice to give maybe our guys a little bit of courage? Why should they put themselves out there and risk everything in that exchange?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the short answer is, in that act, it's a communication of the purity of your intentions. Like in that act of you risking rejection and being vulnerable, it shows that you're sincere, and it shows that you actually care enough about her good to put yourself out there and take the burden of rejection and just like own that, rather than being ambiguous, like that. It's like clarity is charity. I think a lot of times as guys we don't really know. I didn't for the longest time. I've learned since girls often stay awake for hours at night and wonder what is going on in the mind of the man that she is interested in. It's like he said he wants to hang out. What does that mean? I don't know. Does he want to date? We talked about this. It sounded like flirting. I don't know. We went to coffee. Was that a date? I don't know if I just went on a date or not. The clearer that you can be with a woman you're interested in, and say the words like, I would like to go on a date with you. I think you're amazing. That is such an act of love for a young lady to receive. It prepares you, and notice how you're ultimately caring about her good, even if that relationship doesn't work out. It prepares you, in a sense, for the purpose of marriage, right? Paul says in Ephesians, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and handed himself over for her. So that's the model for us, is Jesus on the cross, giving his body over to his bride. This is where we get the idea that men, it's fitting that men initiate love. Not saying that women can't do that, but it's beautiful in the way that God designed us as male and female, for men to be initiators of the self-sacrificial love.
Yep, great answer. Any other questions?
How did you know if it was God talking to you instead of just your mind telling you, was that God, what does it mean?
Yeah, we can get that from both maybe. I don't know if you heard it clearly, but how do you know if it's God speaking to you? How do you know if it's maybe just a voice in your head? How do you clarify if it's the Lord speaking to you?
Honestly, for me, it's never very clear at all, ever. I honestly, most of the time, I get sort of inclinations from prayer, and I find a lot of answers in talking about it with people that I trust. So, and which is definitely a way in which God can show as well. So, I have a spiritual director, and my brother as well are people that I come to after I've prayed, and they can help clarify. But for me personally, it's never clear, and it's kind of the worst sometimes. But it's God for me.
Okay. Sometimes there's a question underneath the question, and I feel like I need to say this. When we're talking about this stuff, we're not talking about whether or not that you're going to find love in your life. I want to say that very clear. I know it's so beautiful. I heard the sighs when you talked about your relationship, and there's part of us that longs for that. And it's a good ache. If you felt that when he said, when she loves me, it reveals the type of love that God has for me. And you felt that ache, that's very good. Very good. It's God's design in making us male and female, and this is what relationship should ultimately point us to. But I don't want anybody here to feel like maybe you're called to love and maybe you're not called to love. If you don't do things right, you don't discern right, you might miss out on love. You are intimately, intensely loved by love itself. Every one of you here. Vocation is not a question of like whether or not you're going to be called to love. A vocation is a means that helps you arrive at heaven or destiny. It helps you arrive at sainthood. So marriage will help you arrive at sainthood. Religious life will help you arrive at sainthood. But like being loved, that's what I was trying to say at the beginning. I want to make sure it's so clear. Like you've already found the one. You've already found the love that your heart is looking for. And maybe this is an unfolding thing for our whole lives. But it's Jesus that you long for, you dream of happiness. John Paul II says. Okay, now to answer that question, what is God's voice and what is not God's voice? This is why you do the hard work now as a high school student where maybe vocation is far away and entering into a prayer life. Part of having a consistent prayer life is being able to recognize this is the voice of the Father, and being able to recognize, wait, this is the voice of the liar and the accuser and the one who discourages me and says I'm not enough. And you can, as you pray consistently, faithfully, and sometimes when it doesn't feel like God is there, only when you go through that can you really start to be able to hear and recognize the subtleties of God's voice. I would say the things that bring about good fruit in you, right? Bring about your best self, the most freedom, right? When you find yourself like I was saying, being fully alive, like that's an indication like of the good fruits that you may be following the Spirit of the Lord. The indication that you're following the voice of the enemy, anxiety, self-condemnation, doubt, right? We can look at ourselves and see what fruits are there and what voice am I listening to?
Yeah, I had a conversation with a priest when I was discerning if I should go to seminary, if it was religious life that was my calling, right? And he just simply said, if you're responding out of fear, you're responding poorly. If your response is, I'm going to go to seminary because I'm afraid no one will ever love me, I'm afraid that I'm not meant for marriage, whatever those fears might be, or even the flip side, if you're like, I'm entering into marriage, or I'm entering into seminary because of the fact that I'm afraid I won't get to heaven if I don't, right? Only priests are holy enough to get to heaven might be the fear, right? Whatever fear it might be, it was really good to hear, like, if you're responding from fear, anxiety, it's a pretty good indication that it's the wrong voice that you're listening to. Not all the time, right? The Lord can instill fear, right? When the angels came, they typically, in Scripture, almost every single time say, do not be afraid, right? Because it can be fearful to see how the Lord's speaking to us. So fear isn't bad, but if you're responding out of like this gut, like you're saying, this anxiety, it's probably something that you should continue praying with and chewing on. So, great answers. Any other questions? Yeah?
I just forgot.
Okay, yeah. I forget my questions. That's why I have to write them down. Yes?
Zach,
Oh, no.
has it been hard balancing time with your friends and your girlfriend?
This seems again like a personal question.
No, not at all.
And Katie, you too.
Yes. I think a lot of times it's a little bit of trial and error, with lots of error. But I feel like it's different because when you're growing with one person, you continue to push it with them, and then you want to just keep spending time with them. But I think it's also good to realize that like we're not married, and there is a very real possibility that we don't end up getting married, and sticking to your friends is extremely important. And I think it helps when your friends can help you as well, telling you when you're not, treating them right. But just being self-aware is the most important part.
It's very hard to tell sometimes. Most of the time, it's just like I don't even notice that I'm neglecting my friends because I'm still like talking to them sometimes. And, like, I say hi, we give each other, stuff like that. But I feel like it's definitely something that is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I think just the fact that like our friends are our friends, like my friends are his friends and his friends are my friends kind of thing. Like we're like in a friend group, I feel like. And so like, and so like they can all be like over there and we'll be over here, and it's just like not okay, And so I feel like a lot of the time it's like being aware of the situation that you're in and knowing when you need to spend time with your friends. And like you said, like we're not married. We still need our friends. It's super important to have good friends, especially when you're in a dating relationship. Because if we did break up or something like that, who would I go to? Probably my friends. And if I don't have those anymore, then I'm just alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually having a very similar conversation to this with a friend at dinner the other night. Ashley and I were talking, we were sort of reminiscing on what his viewpoint of us beginning to date was. And he was sharing, I think the question was asked in sort of a silly fashion to sort of stump you two, but I think it's a good question, right? Because it's twofold. It's one, for the people who are dating, if you're in a relationship right now, right? You desire to be with the person you're dating. That's a good thing, right? You desire to spend time with them, and time with them that's intentional, right? A set aside from your friends. That's a good desire, right? But also the flip side, as the friend, it's very easy, and I think sort of in a broader sense, talking about vocation, it's very easy when you see someone else chasing after their vocation, discerning it actively, and you're not. Or someone who's entering into a vocation, you go to a wedding and you sort of feel a sense of jealousy almost. It's easy to do that, right? To say, that's what I desire, that's what I want. And it's easy for that to lead you to say, okay, you're not spending enough time with us, right? You too spend too much time alone, right? While it might be true, they need to spend a little more time with their friends, but there is a goodness to that you as the friend can encourage them to do. That is a good thing that they're doing, right? And there needs to be a balance, but I think it's easy for that to turn into sort of a jealousy or a like, I wish I had that, but resist that temptation. It's a good desire that you have to share in that, but if it's leading you to bring your friends down, maybe not the best thing. Maybe one last question. Yeah.
Have you guys have any struggles or problems or moments where you thought you were gonna break up, and if so, how did you work through those or know that the decision you made was right and stuff like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever argued to the point of breaking up.
Not necessarily arguing.
What do you mean?
I don't know, just moments where you felt like you were gonna break up or something, and there was tension, and you didn't know what to do.
What the Jews?
Yeah, come on.
At the very beginning of our relationship, I remember it was
She was totally gonna break up.
like a what? Anyways, we were really young, and we still are, and probably too young, but it's okay. Whenever we first started out, I remember anytime we would be at school, and I think this kind of goes into the friend and a thousand friends and girlfriend thing, he would ignore me at school. And I was like, what is happening? Because we were together, and it was great. And then whenever we would hang out, it would be great. And then we'd go to school, and he wouldn't talk to me, and I would be like, what? And it felt really weird, and I was so concerned. And I talked to him about it, and he was like, oh yeah, sorry, we worked on it, and nothing happened. And I was like, oh boy. And so I got really worried, and I thought I was gonna have to dump him, but then I talked to him again about it, and I was like, for real this time, what is happening? And I don't know, maybe you could tell the kinder version of the story, but
I mean, I don't know, you said it like it was. I honestly, it was a while ago. It's kind of hard to remember. I won't
Sure, I remember all
but
it got much
It
better.
got better.
It did.
Yeah.
I think it was just a maturity thing too.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Not really
I've
sure.
always been super timid as well, so I think that kind of.
Yeah. And you're responding to a call, right? And when you
Yeah.
say, like, this is something that I think we should work on, it may have been more on you, right?
Right,
But
definitely.
there's a call to change, right?
Yeah, and honestly, it was a really big step, at least for me. Like, it kind of made me realize that, like, this is something I have to take seriously.
Mhm.
So it helped me, and probably us, grow a lot. Yeah.
Great. Great. Well, thank you guys for being with us for this Q&A. Any last statements that you would like to make? Closing out the night, talking about discernment, talking about vocation. You've said it all, laid it all out there. Wonderful.
It's been great.
Great.
God bless you all.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us.